the Happy Scientist podcast. Each episode is designed to make you more focused, more productive, and more satisfied in the lab. You can find us online at bitesizebio.com/happy scientist. Your hosts are Kenneth Vogt, founder of the executive coaching firm Vera Claritas, and Dr. Nick Oswald, PhD, bioscientist, and founder of Bitesize Bio.
Hello, this is Nick Oswald welcoming you to this Bitesize Bio webinar, which today is a live episode of the Happy Scientist podcast. If you want to become a happier, healthier, and more productive scientist, you are in the right place. With me, as always, is the Bitesize Bio team's Mr. Miyagi, Mr. Kenneth Vogt. In these sessions, we'll hear from Ken mostly on principles that will help shape you for a happier and a more successful career. And along the way, I'll pitch in with points from my personal experience as a scientist and from working with Ken. If you have any questions along the way, put them into the questions box on the side of your screen and I will put them to Ken. And today we will be discussing why keeping your options open is holding you back. Okay, Ken, take it away.
All right. So the notion of having options, doesn't that sound wonderful? I would love to have more options. Seems like options are the source of freedom. There's just nothing bad that could possibly be there, right? Not so much. I know that may sound a bit provocative, but give me a chance to talk about that and also to talk about what the solution is to the problem you may not even know you have yet. So the first thing about options that you have to do is you have to decide which option you're going to take in any given moment, right? So that word decide, it's kind of an interesting word. If we take it apart, the suffix is side. And you're going to recognize side from other words that have that as a suffix, like homicide, suicide, fratricide. What does side mean? Well, it means to cut off. So when you decide, you cut off your options. Oh, that sounds horrible. So wouldn't it be better to hang on to those options? Because then I have possibilities, right? That's the notion. Well, not exactly. What people end up doing in that situation is they hoard their options. They think if I have more options, things are better. So there are half a dozen projects I could be working on. There are 3 or 4 initiatives that I could sign up for. There are multiple opportunities for jobs. I could work in this lab or that lab or this other lab. I could take this lateral promotion that puts me in a different area, and what we do is we spend our time pondering all of those things and fantasizing about them. Like, wow, wouldn't it be great if I went over and joined this group, or I moved to this lab? Wouldn't it be wonderful if I ran this particular experiment or that one? Or what if I did both? And so now what we start doing is we start stacking up these things that are that feel real, but they're not real. They haven't happened yet. They're just possibilities. But we're giving ourselves all kinds of warm, fuzzy feelings from all the stuff we might do, that we could do, that it's possible we'll do. The problem with all this stuff is none of the possibilities make it onto your resume. That the lab you didn't join, although you could have, doesn't count. The program that you didn't participate in doesn't count until you participate. Nothing happens there. Yep. And so then we become a hoarder of options. And maybe you've seen some of these reality TV shows of people that are caught up in that kind of behavior. And it's heartbreaking. and it's painful. They think they're improving their life. They think they're making things richer, but they're doing exactly the opposite, to the point where you get so frozen in possibilities that you never pick any. You never do anything to actually move forward. Now, that's a dangerous place to be. At some point, you have to actually commit and do something. That's the stuff that allows you to have future opportunities. If you don't want to have any more opportunities other than the ones you have right now, don't make any decisions. Don't pick any. And that's it. Your opportunities will start to dry up. And that's a real problem. So there's an interesting historical account about Cortez. Cortez lands in Mexico, and he knows his crew is exhausted from the long journey, and he wants to motivate them to succeed in this new land. So he orders them to burn the boats, right? And we've probably heard that account before. But why does that work? Because it took away their possibilities. They couldn't sail off to somewhere else. They couldn't sail back home. They had to make it here now with what's going on in this moment. And well, arguably it worked. And it allowed them obviously to make very hard choices. And I'm not standing for colonialism or the conquistadors, but the point is that we are in settings like that every day ourselves. We have to make some decisions, and we gotta take something from among our choices and actually start doing it and actually make it reality. And in so doing, that means other things are going away. Now, sometimes they go away just because you don't have time right now. But other times they go away because they had a short shelf life. Sometimes an opportunity presents itself to you, and if you don't take it now, or at least take it soon, it'll be gone. If there's a job opening somewhere, it'll only be open until it's filled, right? If there's an opportunity to put your hand up and say, I want to run that experiment, I want to take charge of that program, if you don't say yes to it, chances are someone else will, and then it's no longer there for you. So the bottom line is not, now what do I do? Well, what you do is you choose your priorities. Now that is a different thing than choosing among your options. Choosing your priorities it creates the opportunity for what will happen next. Because if you have a variety of options in front of you and you don't know what to do, well, if you don't know what to do, it's probably because you haven't selected your priorities yet. So if you select your priorities and then use that as a map for, well, what would fit into that? Well, I want to make sure I move up in this particular lab. I would like to become a PI here. Well, then you start seeing opportunities. Say, what will help me with that? Well, that won't. That will. Well, now it's clear. Well, that first one might have been fun, might be interesting, but if it doesn't help you in your career advancement, and that is something that you care about in this moment, then you need to choose other things. Now, it's not to say that everything you do has to be about career advancement. Sometimes you are there because you just enjoy the work, and so you want to do work that's exciting and stimulating, and maybe you want to work with certain equipment. Maybe there are things you want to develop with your own hands. Those are fine priorities. Just be clear about them. Be aware what your priorities are. If you take a close look at your priorities, you might examine them based on the choices you've made up till now. So it would appear that my priority has been to make it as easy on myself as possible. My priority was just to have fun. My priority was just to do things I think are interesting. My priority was to do things by myself. My priority was to do things with other people. Now, none of those things are necessarily bad, but if they're not chosen with awareness, then what your options are, they look different. And sometimes once you have clear priorities, some options just go away. And not go away in that they're snatched away from you, but you look at them, realize they never really were an option. Based on my priorities, that's not of any value to me whatsoever. So it clarifies things. It makes it easier to pick what you need. And it also makes it clear, like, wow, I don't like the options that are available to me right now. Or I don't have any options available to me right now. Well, when you see that, that allows you to then take a good hard look and say, do I need to make a change somehow? Do I need to improve my reputation? Do I need to be somewhere else? Do I need to be around different people? You start to find out that sometimes people you're hanging out with you enjoy them, but they're not helping you advance in your career. Sometimes you realize that the way things are has to be different if you're going to get where you want to go. And you won't know that until you really focus your awareness on what your priorities are. So, Nick, I will ask you, what do you think about the notion of keeping your options open?
It's pretty interesting actually because I've given quite a lot of career talks from my own perspective on not getting too fixed on one option and not getting too fixed on here's my path and and I'm not going to consider anything else and then freaking out when you can't get there. And I was just trying to ponder on that, and I was, as you were saying, talking there, and I think that it's kind of a yin and yang type thing. So there's one moment to keep your options open and assess them from where you are now, where the approach that I take when I speak to people about careers is look at where you are now, look at the general direction you would like to go in, take a step to go in that direction, but keep your eyes open for the variety of options, because then you can branch off into a different way, a different pathway that you might not have been able to see in the beginning. You see what I mean? So
Yeah.
one example is how I came to do Bitesize Bio. I didn't do that. I didn't decide at some point I was going to do that. It came up as an option based on me following a particular path. But what you're talking about is quite interesting. It's at the moment that you make the decision, it's burning all of the other bridges, and that's quite an interesting one. Because that's then a more masculine thing. It's about energy, focus, decisions, and generating momentum. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
And so if you're trying to relate that to someone who, like, say you want to take the classical scientific path, you want you're in grad school or you're a postdoc, and you want to be at the top research wise. You want to be a top level researcher, and that's where you want to get to. In one in your school of thought there, it's about burning the bridges and doing all of the things that it takes to get you there, committing. Yeah.
Sure.
But in the other school of thought, there's also the option to, while you're going, just stop every so often, have a look around and say, is this right for me? Am I now at a stage where there are other options that are more appealing? Yes, no.
Right.
If it's yes, then refocus and off you go again.
Well, and that's kind of my main point is when you take those moments to just consider what possibilities are available in this moment, that's fine. Yeah, and it feels good to ponder that stuff. But if all you're doing is daydreaming and fantasizing, nothing happens. At some point, you're going to have to pick one of those new options and do it. And I agree with what you're saying. It is kind of a masculine thing, and that's not to take away from any woman in science, women have masculine energy too. They just use it different than men do. And I mean, that's a broad statement, but sometimes you need to do the masculine thing. Sometimes you need to do the feminine thing, the nurturing, the receiving part. And that's fine. But understand that when it comes to your options, just keeping them open doesn't do anything for either kind of energy. Nothing is happening there. Nothing is being brought into reality. Reality happens after you pick one of your choices. Because then something starts to happen. And it doesn't always turn out perfect either. Sometimes you start something, you're like, well, that didn't go as easy as I hoped it would. In fact, didn't go the way I wanted it to at all. Well, that happens. That's one of the costs of making choices among your options. And sometimes that means other options that were available when you made your decision are gone now. That happens. And that's a price you have to accept when it comes time to make your choice. You can't probably be employed in two labs at once. So when you pick one, the other one may well go away. That option may not be available to you anymore. Now, sometimes you can hang on to your other options for a bit, or even for a long time. So it's not like making a choice is going to mean that you're doomed. Everything else is gone forever. Well, maybe not. So it's just about being aware when you have to pick up an option and take it from just a thought into a reality. Then it becomes a different game.
Yeah. So I suppose if you look at my pathway, professional pathway as an example, right? Then, so I was all set to be a PI. That's what I want to do. I wanted to go to the top in research. And I discovered a small detail that I didn't like academia after the end of after grad school, at the end of grad school. And so it was, I committed to grad school, got to the end, and did the burn the bridges thing. This is all what I'm doing. Funnily enough, I did think about stopping and doing something else, but that was a big energy diffuser. That took away a lot of focus. So that's the kind of the premise you're talking about here, I guess. At the end of that, then I got to I realized I didn't want to be in grad school anymore. So I didn't want to be in academia anymore. Sorry. I had the PhD, so I wanted to stay in science. I wanted to go into biotech. So I did that, committed to that. After 7 or 8 years of that, decided I would much rather be in publishing, but I didn't know how to do that. So I just started writing, and that was the blog that turned out to be Bitesize Bio. But I didn't know that at the time. But at some point, I then made a commitment that Bitesize Bio was going to be a business, and so each of those is the flip between you have a course, you commit to that, and then you make a decision, and then you commit to that decision, and then so there's two phase. There's a decision phase, a very short decision phase, and then a commitment phase. It looks like to me, but I hadn't thought of the idea of your that once you've made the decision, then then burn the boat.
Sure.
Because if you are in Mexico, or was it Mexico? Yeah, it was Mexico.
Yeah.
It was Conquistadors, wasn't it? And you have a really hard job of setting up there, and you keep wistfully looking back at the boats that could take you back to the stuff you know. That's going to take a lot of energy out of you. It's going to take a lot of energy out of you, a lot of focus, and potentially lead to a rebellion in that crew, And
Right.
And I guess the same thing happens with you and yourself. If you keep looking back to pastures old or pastures new, even, then you keep looking over the fence. The grass is always greener, and that's all taking energy away from what you could be committing to.
Sure.
Energy you could be committing to the cause. Is that the central premise that you're talking about?
Yeah, and there's another side to this. The shadow side of this is when you decide not to take an option. So you've chosen this particular path, but if you still leave everything open, like you say, it's still just you can look over your shoulder and wistfully wonder what would happen if I do that instead. Whereas if you decide, no, one thing for sure, I'm not going to do X anymore. X is no longer an option for me. And it clarifies things. It just clears the air a bit. And sometimes we look at that and it's like, oh, I guess I got to give that up. It's a painful loss. Other times it's like, it's just a distraction. I want this gone. You can choose how you feel about these options. And it doesn't mean you don't have to demonize anything. You're like, well, that's a stupid option. I'm not going to do that. And that is a immoral option. I can't do that. And no, it's just you're going to choose, and that's it. That's where you're going to go now, because that's the new reality. And reality is where you get to do things. Other things are just, I'm going to say just fantasy, but they haven't yet gelled into reality, and it's not the same world. That unmanifest stuff is quite interesting, and it's good to ponder things. It's good to contemplate. In your business, you do need to think outside the box, and outside the box is outside of reality, right? But at some point, you gotta take that, whatever you gain from that, and bring it to reality, because reality is the actual job you have. It's the actual assignment you have. It's the actual experiment you're doing. It's something that could be put on paper, that this is what happened. It is going to become a historical event. and if you don't ever have any history, you don't have any resume. You don't have any resume, you don't have any future.
There's a quote. Yeah. Okay. I'm guessing, I'm just trying to think of examples, but of where people will have felt that commitment and can feel the difference. One very simple one is, if you look at those people who are, those eternal student people, where they do a course and then they do another course, and well, that one would be good. Oh, and then they just collect lots of stage one experience, if you like, because they never commit to go deeper into one area. Because I don't know what drives that. It's just I don't know. But it's not a judgment on it. It's just that if you then, everyone on here presumably has done some level of scientific training and then decided they're going to go deeper down one line, and that is what then starts to open up different doors. And actually, then that's when you really start living and moving up to different. Not start living. You're still living as a student, but that's when you really start living that journey, if you like.
Right. And some things just won't. Your future options won't appear until you start making some decisions and move forward. Exactly. So right now you have the options you have, but you're going to have more options in the future, but only because you decided on some past options and it started to take you down a path. Mm-hmm. So you can't just sit there and wait at the crossroads and hope that they're going to build new roads to you. It's not going to work like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess what are the things that drive people to not make those decisions? It's fear of the unknown. It's, that's probably a big one, actually.
Yeah, for sure.
Fear of the next step. Generally fear, or some sort of uncertainty or indecision in a way. Is that true?
Yeah. Well, and we've all had that experience our entire lives. They were just more childish experiences when we were child or when we were children. But the fact is, you learn to walk because it never crossed your mind to not be a walker. You learn to talk because it never crossed your mind to not be a talker. That pattern is already there. It's already built in, and you've already succeeded at it. The fact that you've gotten as far as you've gotten in your education already says that you've been choosing among your options and taking action. Well, now just keep going. Now it's the next phase. And it's always been about the unknown. In fact, the unknown, you don't have to be afraid of it. You can be excited about it. I want to see the unknown. I want to get in there. I want to see what's going on. and and that's where all the juice in life is going to come from. And yes, sometimes the experiences will be hard. Sometimes you will lose, but it doesn't have to kill you. And you can protect yourself. You've gotten this far and protected yourself to this point. You're going to keep doing that. You're going to be all right.
Yeah, it just occurred to me there actually that uh, I always have a bit of a struggle processing when people talk about getting in, don't stop getting in your own way, you know. And what you're talking about there is, well, as a child, you don't get in your own way, you just do it because you've got no other frame of reference. You don't know what might go wrong, right?
Right.
As you become more and more experienced, you think you know more and more of what can go wrong, and that can drive you to get in your own way of making the necessary next step of just taking the risk. And uh, you see that in people who stay in the same place for a long, long time, even though it's over ripened for them. You know,
Well, I like that phrase.
but they've taken the path has not become optimal for them, but they're too scared to make of what might go wrong if they make the next step. And as you say, that's where the juice is looking for, looking for the next. I wouldn't even say the next level. What's the next challenge? And I'm just a bit fascinated by this kind of this this sort of tension between looking at the options and then committing to an option. Because if you're in the job that you've been in for 15 years that is not fulfilling you anymore, that you hate everything about it, but you're too scared to move, then you're playing it. You will play it looking at all the options. You maybe even just in a kind of fantasy way. What's next? Next is the fire to go with this. Let's take the risk regardless. Burn the boats. Let's see what happens.
Yeah. I have a friend who's an anesthesiologist. So obviously she's an MD. She's been doing this now for 20 some years. So she's been through all the education. She's had all the experience. And she's gotten to the point where she's thinking, I think I'm done with this. I don't want to be an anesthesiologist anymore. She still goes to work every day, does her job. She very much cares about helping people, but she can feel that it's time to do something different. So yeah, she's gonna have to jettison all this investment she's made to get into where she is now. And I think a lot of scientists can relate to this. You put a huge amount of investment into getting your degrees, and now if you've been in the lab for a while, you've put in a huge investment there. And what now? I'm supposed to open up a Subway restaurant? Why would I do something completely different? Well, who knows? Who knows why you would do something different? Why you might make a lateral shift or a shift to a different kind of work in science, like what Nick described. He was on the path of being a PI, and all of a sudden that shifted, and now he's been for these last 12, 13, 15 years being a publisher, but in science. So he didn't throw away what he had from the past. He found a new way to build on it. But that's something that might not have been in his awareness at all when he was first working on getting his Bachelor of Science in biology, right? It only arrived later after he continued to choose among his options. So.
You've had a similar journey of going from being a specialist to not a generalist, but going to something that's not within that specialism.
Oh, yeah, that's for sure. And I would have never guessed that, and I wouldn't have chosen it earlier in my career.
Yeah. The funny thing that this taught me was that I thought that being a scientist is about knowing lots about science, right? And it isn't. It's about a way of thinking and a way of conducting yourself and a way of driving yourself. And you can use that for lots of other things as well. And it sets you up for a lot of other. I keep looking at these tracks on the screen. Actually, it sets you up to go down power down either of those tracks that can have completely different destinations, just
Yeah,
depending on what you apply it to.
I like that illustration because the left or the right, they look the same. There's nothing about in one path over the other that looks obvious. Obviously the left side is better. You're like, no, that's not obvious here at all. And it won't be obvious until you go down the track and see where it leads.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot to this actually, and this is just one angle that you've looked at here, which is
Mm-hmm.
about how do you take the step, how do you power such a change and such a how do you power going deep into something, and
Right.
it's interesting because even though I would consider myself I've gone deep into something, I can still see where I don't burn the bridges, and so okay, what can I prune away? What choices can I prune away to leave myself with nothing to focus on except going deep into the most important parts of it? And that's something that everyone can take regardless of what position they're in, I think.
Yeah, options can be a weight on you. You have to keep managing them. You have to keep feeding and watering them. You know, whereas if it's gone, I don't have to think about it again. It's over.
And they feel so safe though. It feels so nice and comforting to have them.
Well, but that's an illusion because they're not real yet.
That's true.
The things that are safe are the things that you have actually put into practice. Now, that's the stuff that is providing safety. The possibility of the future. I mean, I'm not anti-possibility. Don't get me wrong here, but we have to understand that possibilities and reality are not the same thing.
Motion is the safest way, actually,
Yeah, yeah.
isn't it? Motion towards an intention is the safest way. Oh, there's a quote. So, I'm just thinking about when we started working together, and what I wanted to do was we worked together. You helped me with to stabilize Bite-Size Bio as a business, and what I desperately wanted to do was to make it safe and make it a level that I could understand, and it was in a box, and that was all good. And one of the
Sure.
things you've taught me very earlier on is that standing still is not safe. You need to be moving to an upward trajectory, and that's where the motion is. It's also where the bumps are, but
Sure.
that's why life can be challenging, and then overcoming the challenge, that's where you get more experience and all that stuff.
Well, yeah, to all you biologists out there, isn't that one of the ways you assess that something is alive and healthy? Is that it's moving? If it's not moving, you wonder if it's dead, right?
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, that's this went off on a tangent actually, but it's, I think that I think it's a great topic, and hopefully people get some insight into it from themselves, because I think this is literally applicable to any uh, any position, anyone in any position. It's that thing of, if you look at someone else and think that they don't have to, in their position, they don't have to burn the bridges and go deeper, then it's because, in order to go deeper and to stay living, that they have to, that the best thing they can do is go deeper, then it's probably an illusion, because you can't see, you can't, it always looks better when you look at someone else's life, if you know what I mean. And I think everyone in any position can take something from this and go, how can I make this easier on myself by giving myself less choice?
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I'd say that's a good breaking point, and we've given people something to ponder, and we've shown some application. So let's see what y'all do with it in your world.
Okay, Ken, thanks for that wonderful insight. So hopefully that sparked some ideas or realization or questions for you. And uh, if you have questions that you would like to ask us about it, you can do it via the contact page on Bitesize Bio, or by the Happy Scientist Facebook page, which is Facebook.com/The Happy Scientist Podcast. And don't forget to go back and look at, if you find this useful, go back and look at our previous episodes, which are on on YouTube, and they are on your favorite podcast platform as well. So until next time rather, good luck in your research and goodbye from all of us at Bitesize Bio, including Mr. Miyagi.
Okay, bye all.
The Happy Scientist is brought to you by Bitesize Bio, your mentor in the lab. Bitesize Bio features thousands of articles and webinars contributed by hundreds of PhD scientists and scientific companies who freely offer their hard-won wisdom and solutions to the Bitesize Bio community.